Hello, hello. What is up, YouTube family? Hopefully, you guys are doing absolutely blessed today. We're going to be going into Wyckoff Sundays episode 30. All right, guys, it is currently Monday morning, 8:30 a.m., about an hour before New York Open. And Sunday we had a bit of a busy day, so we didn't get a chance to get into this Wyckoff Sunday, but definitely going to get into it today for you guys before market opens. All right, obviously, for me personally, I'm typically not trading Mondays anyway. So a lot of this stuff that we speak about is what we're kind of looking for later on in the week anyways, all right? So let's go ahead and talk about firstly what happened last week, right? And, kind of review our ideas for the week in terms of how the market could play out, right? So first off, we're obviously going to start with dollar, DXY, US dollar, right? One of the biggest things that we spoke about was that this area here was most likely not going to be holding, right? We were expecting price to get lower than these levels. We were actually expecting a big drop to be created, essentially basically looking at this like the beginning of a Wyckoff accumulation, right? So we spoke about obviously the bigger picture idea, right? So obviously here we can see we were talking about the schematic, right? And really that we were probably only in the beginning, right? Maybe like this being an SC, this being an STM phase B, and then waiting for a potential spring to happen later on, right? We also spoke about obviously the reason we're looking for this here is because we believe we're in a bigger time frame, phase D, right? Where we've already had our signs of strength and we're waiting for this BU/LPS to continue price to the upside, right? So lots of basically opportunity came from that, right? Because we did end up obviously pretty much instantly having a great push to the downside on dollar. So we can see here, this is what did end up happening, right? So I believe Wyckoff Sundays was right around here, right? Price dropped off instantly, broke the low, right? Came back up, left behind these relatively equal highs, and then dumped very aggressively straight through all the lows. We can see that on the daily. We have this beautiful down candle, right? And then we have these previous wicks here that have been playing out over the last 2 days of markets, right? So pretty good when it comes down to it with the way that this looks, right? There was two main zones that we did speak about on the session, which was this low and this low, right? We can see that price kind of stopped in between, right? We have this imbalance we spoke about from a long time ago that has, essentially stopped there, right? So right in between the two areas. So yeah, I mean, essentially what we had said was, after this daily down candle, maybe we can start looking for longs into continuations higher, right? So I believe that's the main thing that we spoke about, right? And again, those are really the main two zones there for dollar. Now, obviously, what ended up happening was when we did end up getting that down candle, if you guys were on our live session on Thursday, we did decide that after this push to the downside happened here, we could see that there was this lower time frame liquidity, right? We had to sweep through, we came back up, right? And right around here was where we decided to start buying USD CHF, right? So we can see that dollar at the same time ended up driving lower, right? With USD CHF, we didn't have that happen, right? So if we go over here to USHF, right? This was where we essentially matched that on dollar, right? So USHF had a bit of a push down, came close to our stop here, but ended up reacting. We just hit 1 to 3 this morning. Right now sitting at about a 1 to 2 risk to reward prior to New York Open, right? And it did end up giving us a pretty good impulse to the upside, hitting that 1 to 3 level, right? Obviously, dollar ended up kind of doing this extra dive down. And we do see that it did drive low, but it didn't quite take the low that we see there, right? So it could technically still be, a good zone, right? It really just depends on what happens here. And we're going to talk about what we can see happen for the following week soon, but that's what happened last week. Those are really the main things that we looked for. The sell-off on dollar, and then from here, now that we sold off, we're trying to see where are we going to get this buy back up really commencing. And the fact that we had these equal highs here from last week could be a sign that we're eventually going to be getting, that impulse higher, We just got to get the right timing for it, obviously, right? Let's talk about everything else. Euro USD, right? When we had that big impulse down on dollar, as we spoke about, Euro USD obviously ended up buying up further, right? We look at GU buying up further, right? Originally, we wanted this high to hold a while back, right? But instead, it just ended up turning into a distribution that turned into accumulation down here. So reaccumulation scenario, right? We saw price going to the upside, so still good. Obviously price action wise, from a Wyckoff perspective, all we wanted to see though was for price to really break down from this level. We didn't really ended up getting that, right? It just became reaccumulation, 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 right? All these points here are reaccumulation moments, right? So pretty good, for the bulls here in general. And we're going to see if, the bears will come in if we do start to get some dollar bullishness or not, right? So that's EU, GU, right? AU, same thing. We just ended up continuing through, right? Distributions just turning into accumulations inside of a key area here now. NU as well, right? Still rising up. Still hasn't quite gotten above this zone here. We'll see. We'll talk a bit more about what we think is going to happen there, right? But that's pretty much that. The other thing that we had been speaking about for a long time was the bigger time frame on USD Chef. We have been talking about this build-up in liquidity for weeks now. If you guys go back to a couple of Wyckoff Sundays ago, we had been talking about the likelihood of price going ahead and dropping through there, and this being a potential zone that we could buy from. Seeing that USD CHF did that was exactly why we ended up using that for the dollar long idea as opposed to anything else. And USD Chef has been showing a lot better strength than the rest of the pairs, right? We did just play an order flow type of trade, playing off of this 1 hour trap candle. Again, ended up holding beautifully, right? So seeing us sell off all through there, could that be the liquidity sweep to bring us back through? Potentially, and we'll talk about that later on. So that's you, Chef. And that's pretty much the main things we talked about currency-wise. Now let's go into metals, all right? So, metals, let's see what we spoke about last week. Actually, I just realized we should be going through this, right? But yeah, pretty much main thing was seeing dollar sell off aggressively, right, as we wrote there, and then eventually getting us to buy back up to the upside, right? We spoke about NU probably going to be holding this level. Forgot about that. Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, so actually there was a really nice retracement from what we spoke about there from NU. So that was actually a great opportunity if we were looking to see the dollar buys, right? I believe that's what we spoke about. Let's double check here what I'm saying.
A lot of them from my perspective here, so it's looking more and more bullish, from my perspective here. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening.
I just realized I don't have the sound sharing here.
Right? If we, from my perspective here, so it's looking more and more bullish, from my perspective here. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening, right?
So yeah, that's really what we just said, was just that it was looking bullish because we had this sweep on this low, right? We had price trading away, and pretty much across the board things were looking bullish. And because of that, we were looking for that next impulse down for dollar, right? Because obviously these move inverse. So that was NU. Did forget about that zone that we spoke about there that had filled the imbalance. Now we're going to talk about gold here. So what did we say for gold yesterday? I think we were pretty in between about gold yesterday, right? The biggest thing that we saw was obviously the distribution that had played out. We had also seen that price had kind of gone down towards these lows. Now, we kind of looked at this at first as equal lows, but we also considered the possibility of it being more of a sweep, as we can see really how it was here, because even though it was relatively equal, we do see that when this did come down and get to that low, it actually did get lower than the low of the entire distribution, which is pretty classical for, again, reaccumulation type of plays. Steve had called out a potential buy from the 1 hour there. Definitely, the right idea direction-wise. Obviously, really the zone is this zone there, which is where we really sold off before, continuing to bring that trend higher. So I think that with dollar and with gold, right? I mean, it does make sense to see gold continuing to push to the upside, since we were expecting dollar to push lower, right? So this rally definitely still makes sense from that perspective. But yeah, we basically just said that we were going to wait and see what happens here with the metals, right? Weren't really too confident in it, like, the equal low call out, because we did point out how although it was kind of equal lows, it also did, take that low. So I think for me, this obviously now in hindsight is definitely a reaccumulation scenario, which is where we have a distribution and we sweep below that distribution with the manipulation to then just continue the overall bullish price action, right? And we do see the retest mitigation level there, right? Now, silver, again, we still kind of want to, I think we were talking about, again, seeing this 57 level get hit. It might just not, but we'll see how everything goes with dollar. Personally, that's what I'd be hoping for, and then later on in Q4 we get the buys to really take place. But yeah,
So that's going to be our reaccumulation moment. Then that could be the moment that we buy from, and then in that case, again, looking for order flow like the 1 hour trap candle that you have pointed out there could be a zone to look for. But I'm not super convinced at the low. I like to see obviously bigger sweeps, especially with the reaccumulation side of things. So it's tough for me to say right now at this moment with this, right? Daily candle, I could see the buying happen, right? So stream here, we have a good call out for you guys for metals at the moment. We are kind of rounding out. It looks like it could be distributing, but that being said, I'm not super convinced just yet with the price action for the buys. I would have liked to have seen a bigger sweep, but if you guys like those zones, I think definitely
yeah, that was basically what we were saying. We just weren't really convinced with the way that sweep down had happened. It wasn't exactly very aggressive. I think that later on that week, silver actually did end up getting an aggressive sweep through, right? So this is silver during the week, I believe. So like basically when gold came down and retested this previous area, silver had ended up actually breaking below. So this is the reaccumulation for silver, right? So still pretty good, right? Makes sense in general. All right, so that's metals. Now let's go ahead and look into indices, right? So I believe what we had been saying for indices. Let's go ahead and just see.
spring of our reaccumulation. One to institutional candle. So indices here, kind of interesting. Last week we had a beautiful institutional candle print in the middle of the week. This was on the Tuesday there, right? Nasdaq as well.
Interesting.
Nasdaq here. Sorry, that was where the buy happened there. So US 30 and Nasdaq ended up diverging, and then Nasdaq ended up buying through those levels. Again, guys, I am more bullish on these right now. I do still think that these can most likely recover. Look at S&P really just breaking through all those highs. So again, I do think that the biggest thing we can do is just wait for bigger pullbacks, get better daily institutional candles type of thing. As of right now, there's no real reason for me to buy from these levels. I want to see bigger pullbacks to come in from here. So nothing from me just yet. All right, guys.
So, okay, basically in a nutshell, yeah, that's what we had been saying. We do think we're bullish on indices. We're switching through after having seen the rally that happened before, because we had been talking about bearishness from these levels from before, right? But we didn't really call out a buy or a sell last week. We kind of just said we wanted to see price get lower, and then we can align ourselves with the bigger time frame with buys, right? So didn't call out sells, did expect price to get lower, right? But again, we don't really want to be selling when our bigger time frame idea is basically bullish, right? And we do see here Nasdaq continuing to the downside, right? US 30 continuing to the downside, and then S&P as well, continuing to the downside here, right? So hopefully we just get bigger pushes down so that again we can have a better point to buy at, right? Could also be that below this level here we get like a reaccumulation play, right? But basically what we had said last week was just waiting for proper daily down candles that we can see engulf to the upside, right? We'll see how this ends up playing out though, because if we do get, for example, US 30 buying up and then impulsively getting below these levels, that could be also a final sweep before a reversal on these. All right, Nasdaq as well. Interesting on the daily for sure, right? Because this can definitely be seen, the whole thing, as a distribution. right? Nice daily up candle there. We're gonna have to see if we do get a setup here or if this really just ends up engulfing the entire push up. Personally, I hope we do stay higher, but we'll see how this all goes. All right. Now, we really got to talk about BTC, of course, right? So the biggest thing that we have been talking about on BTC was this recent, kind of distribution type of price action that have been happening here, right? We wanted to see basically the market go ahead and sell out towards 60 so that we can then get a much clearer buy to the upside. We felt like there was, price had been holding these levels for too long, right? So obviously for us, kind of trading, I guess you could say like leverage trading, right? We always want to find these kind of precision entries where price gets into, more extreme areas, right? If we ever see an area that's kind of holding for a long time, we don't really like to play those until we get a sweep through them, right? Now, obviously, what did end up happening was kind of what we've been talking about on the bigger time frame for BTC in general, which has been the bigger time frame accumulation here. So we did speak about it last week. Again, we can see here these points in volume, really dropping off as price was getting lower, kind of telling us that, okay, we might have actually seen price, we might be seeing price accumulating here in these levels. We've been talking about that for weeks, right? Let's go ahead and play through this. I believe this is where we spoke about it. But essentially, that's what we were saying. We're definitely accumulating. The bottom is in soon, was what we've been looking for. And that either one, we wanted to see the 60K level get hit, or maybe even there get hit, right? For that, right? But obviously, I've been telling people if you're looking for long term, 63K is still a great price, and we'll talk about that here, I believe. Let's see.
For a couple weeks now. We do have that volume divergence that's been playing out,
Yes.
right? Or we end up getting one more low, right? Again, on maybe even lower volume, right? And then from there we end up driving higher. But this is definitely still a valid zone to explore at 61, right? Or at 60, I mean. And if not 60, then again, maybe down here at the 56, 55 level, we can get one more push to the downside there, right? But I think short term, we are heading down below 61. And then after that, guys, if you like BTC for buys, I don't think it's a bad zone to look for, especially if you're looking for more of a long-term thing, right? So that's the idea there for BTC. Definitely.
Cool. So yeah, so that's basically what we have been saying, right? And obviously we know this week BTC went absolutely ballistic. Did not break below that level. We did end up holding, that 61 level, really leaving behind all these lows, right? We could see big wicks and stuff, which for me is still understandable for why we wanted to see that breakthrough. Obviously, we want to just see the liquidity really get hit. But now this is really looking like a bottom, guys, with what we saw happen down here at at 58, right? We have been saying this is probably a bottom. We just wanted to get a retest. Retest never happened. But as we can see from a volume perspective, this is a very, very strong case for the bullishness on BTC, right? So seeing how the market went ahead and, broke below those previous levels with lower and lower volume. And then when we do see the breakout happen here, we get this huge spike in volume, which is very, very nice for after seeing, accumulations happen, right? When we do get the breakout, we want to see that happen on strong volume. So for me, guys, what we saw happen here on BTC, which was a crazy pump, literally 25% within the span of a week, right? Absolutely incredible, move there from it. I mean, I think it's possible, right? It's possible that this could be where the bottom is set. We're reacting from our previous redistribution. We're below the low of a previous, we're reacting from a previous reaccumulation. We're reacting below our previous distribution. So this in and of itself could be our reaccumulation moment to buy through, right? So that's personally what I'm thinking, guys, right? So again, this is a zone we've spoken about since basically the beginning of Wyckoff Sundays. We've been looking for these BTC recoveries, right? A lot of people do think it's going to happen later on, but for me, I think the bull market's going to come a little bit sooner than what people are expecting, because we're in a different era for BTC, right? The institutional era, where now we have ETFs that have been launched for years, right? So since about over here is where the ETFs has been launched. And so, we're going to see these down moves get shorter, and we're going to see the up moves as well also get shorter, right? The more money that flows in, the more stable a market becomes. This drop of 53%, a lot of people typically wanted it to see like the 80% levels, right? Which is typically what we do end up, getting in previous runs, right? As we could see here, this one was about 77%. So I think that this push to the downside is going to be a lot less, right? Getting down into like 53 from top to bottom. And then from there, the rally will obviously get us above, you know, 100 and so on and so forth. Sorry, 120, right? Definitely going to get beyond there. So, yeah, for those of you guys that obviously have been listening and, you decided to dollar cost average, as we have been saying, to be honest, for this entire time that we've been down here, so for the last 77 days or so, you know, then congratulations. You guys, I think, have got a great entry into the crypto markets. All right, guys, and just enjoy the ride. Because I know a lot of people that did enjoy this candle to the upside quite a bit. Quite a bit. Right, look at that volume spike as we start to break through here. I mean, huge signs that we're just going to keep it pumping. All right, so we spent a lot of time there on the last week. Let's talk about what we can see happening for this coming week. All right, guys, so dollar-wise, dollar perspective, two main scenarios, right? The bottom of last week holds, or we just get one more sweep when we get into that extreme area. The way that this happened, everything really is going according to plan. For me, though, I would say since we do have this strong daily down candle here already, I do want to see price just engulf through it, right? Because then technically we're going to have two down candles and it's just not going to look great. It looks a lot better that we have this down candle. We have kind of these white candles here that are, or rather our up candles, right? That are, kind of holding that, right? It's not like we're creating more down candles. So this could still be our institutional candle, right? This could be kind of our accumulation phase there. And even the fact that we had, that final push down last week, right? That got so close to that low. I mean, very difficult to stay into these moves, right? Obviously, like I said, USD CHF did hold and kind of just went back to our break even before launching. But like other things, like, USD CAD had a sweep, NZD USD went a little bit higher after that, right? GU went higher after that. So like people who were, shorting at the time that or longing at the time that I was rather, but they were using a different asset would have gotten taken out. So it does kind of give us like maybe even more likelihood that this can hold because that makes it very difficult for people to be in the trade, right? So essentially what I'm hoping for is just obviously just a push back up through, right? Get right back up towards 99.6 by the end of the week. I think is a pretty reasonable goal, and who knows, maybe further, right? But seeing us engulf that daily candle is basically going to give us the confidence in this move. And if we don't, right, and price just ends up running the high of this daily candle, let's say, and dumping through, or just filling in balance and then dumping back through, well, we're going to have to, again, just kind of reset and see, do we get the proper price action? Do we get the strong down candle that we see can get engulfed the way that we did in this example, right, with this down candle here, right? So because of that, that's why we started to long, right, because the candles were printing properly. So if we do end up breaking through, we're going to need that to happen again, right? So it's not like just buying when we get down here. We obviously still want to be careful. We want to keep in mind the possibility of this being, again, buy to sell motion after taking out all these highs. But for me personally, I am still playing with the idea of this being our BU/LPS, and then we're eventually going to get rocketing back up towards 100, towards 102 on dollar, right? So that's still going to be the idea, right? So number one idea is going to be the engulfment through, and then two, if we do get a reaction down here, then this can be an area that we can revisit as well. And we want the reaction to look kind of like how it did here, right? Like we had the equal lows, we had the sweep, right? Then we start to look to follow up and break through, right? That's basically what we want. So we'll see how this ends up going. All right, guys, so that's dollar. Euro USD perspective, right? We're breaking through a lot of internal points in structure. This is really our extreme area, right? So we do see that this is the high that creates the low. This pullback coming back into that level definitely could mean that we're going to be getting that next drive lower. So I do kind of like Euro USD for that. We're above pretty significant levels. We're inside of an extreme area of price up here, right? This could definitely be the moment, right? GU as well, barely poking above this level, I believe, right? I think it did get above. Let's double check here. Yeah, it did, right? So barely getting above with that sweep there. It could be the case, guys, that we're distributing right now, right? We do have great equal lows here on GU, we can see. So this definitely will get hit at some point here, I believe. Well, I guess we do have a little bit of a sweep there, actually, so maybe we do get one more drive higher. We'll see how GU ends up playing out, but again, definitely looking for the end of the week to push us down. But it's still what we're going to be going with, right? AU's inside of a good zone right now, right? This area here. NU as well did end up holding this level here, so could still react to the downside even now. So I personally can't see that, this dollar low holding and us just recovering. I think that across the board, like we're in extreme areas where we need to be at, and then obviously right now I'm in USD Chef. So if we could really see this recovery, we could be looking at some pretty high risk to rewards, right? We're very close to, 1 to 5 already, which is right here. If we were to engulf the sweep, we're going to be hitting 1 to 9 levels, right? So that's basically what I'm going to be hoping for in this move here. And yeah, definitely just moving stops to break even and just letting this ride through is basically going to be the idea for me with that, right? So if dollar does end up, ripping through, well, then I am positioned, to take advantage of that. So we'll see how that ends up going if we get it now or if we get that sweep through. All right. So that's dollars and currencies. All right. Now we have gold, right? So gold getting back into more extreme areas over here, right? This was a zone that we spoke about that definitely was a sweep. We did end up breaking through it though, obviously, and there was no real reason to short there either, because we did end up getting just continued bullish price action, right? Now if we look at this zone here, definitely a key area, right? Personally for me though, I think I'm going to stay away from metals, right? Because again, like it is definitely the ones that can move without dollar, uh, you know, uh, like without dollar necessarily influencing its movement, right? So gold can continue rocketing through, but if you guys are bearish on gold or silver, low key we are in a good area, right? We have the distribution here from previously, right? I remember speaking about this distribution way back in the day, in Wyckoff Sundays, and then we had this second distribution happen here, right? So technically we are in a zone where there was very strong sellers, right? Same thing with silver, right? And we did just barely miss this low here. So who knows, right? Maybe we can get another push to the downside here from these levels. But at the moment, there's nothing telling us to sell here right now, right? We need to have the smaller time frame giving us the right price action, the breaks in order flow that we need to see in order to really confirm that these sells can happen here for gold, right? So there's that. All right. Now let's go into indices, right? So essentially, what I'd be hoping for from an indice perspective is going to be price accumulating below these lows, right? We're now below the lows of the previous distribution. Can we get price to come down, give us a strong institutional candle, and then push back to the upside? Personally, for me, I actually think NASDAQ can be a good thing to focus on. Tomorrow, when I get back on the charts, hopefully this becomes a big down candle, and then maybe we can actually see that rocket back to the upside. Granted, again, that is kind of opposite from the dollar idea. If we do see dollar buy up, we would actually just see NASDAQ fall off a cliff. Really, if we do see dollar just continue to flow through, then great. Maybe we end up just holding the currency and we don't really end up, looking for these longs on NAS. But again, I do think the way that we swept through here was pretty nice. So I think looking for maybe stocks to still hold up. You can make an argument for it, right? Given what happened here previously. So if we did get kind of a nice candle down, right, we're kind of in the root of the move that brought us lower, then it could end up making sense to see this push up. So, yeah, all in all, if I were to look at NASDAQ for something, it's going to be longs, right? Same thing with, US 30 as we get back into areas like this one. I would probably expect US 30 to get a little bit lower. down into that level, right? And then S&P as well will definitely get lower. So for now, we're looking bearish, but hopefully we can see a recovery on these, from the previous sweeps that we had happen in July, right? So these pushes down there, right, in July, right? This pushes down from here in July, right? And then S&P 500, it would be the pushes down here that happened in July, right? So definitely still lower, and then from there we're going to look to see, can we get institutional candles to bring us back to the upside, right? And now crypto, right? So crypto's back up to 79. Looks like we're about to hit 80 today, right? That's huge. What a crazy move, right? I remember when we called out 80 before seeing the shorts down, which did end up playing out beautifully, because we called buys down here. We saw the rally. We said we're reaching up to at least 80, and then that's when the drop happened. So now we're back up to here. Such a strong look for BTC, guys. Such a strong look for it. So I wouldn't be shorting this bad boy at all. If you are, in long-term positions, don't close them. Some people were asking me, should I close some? I personally wouldn't. I do think that this looks great. It's exactly the kind of price action we want to see. It's exactly the kind of volume we want to see. So until we see something that goes against that, y'all, I think we can maybe think that this bottom is in, right? Maybe our next stop is all the way up to 100, maybe 120, 130. So we'll see. Obviously, that's going to take like months, right? So we're still going to get pullbacks, right? We're still going to get opportunities for, us as leverage traders, right? Maybe this imbalance fill can end up being an opportunity eventually, right? But in general, I do think that we are on a bullish move here for BTC and for ETH as well. We've also spoken about ETH as well on previous calls, which looks great. All right, guys. So that's BTC, that's ETH, okay? Last thing we spoke about was oil, right? So obviously for me, I mean, I did forget that we spoke about this last week, but last week we spoke about oil over here, right, in that area, because it had been holding. We pretty much opened and rocketed to the upside. I'm still bullish on oil, personally, right? I do think that, this could be a reaccumulation that we saw happen here, right? Distribution comes up, breaks the low of that, and then we end up rocketing back up towards the highs. So that's still what I'm looking for here on oil. So treating pullbacks as excuses to long. Truthfully, this would be nice, right? Or even a deeper area, to be honest, like this daily trap candle right here would be even nicer, right? So we'll see, right? It's been kind of like choppy, I guess you could say. There hasn't really been a lot of great manipulations down. So if we can see that happen like either into here or into here, that would be kind of my ideal zones for seeing, oil push higher. But we'll see how that goes. All right, guys. So that is our outlook for the week, right? Let's hope things go smoothly and that we can get some nice pushes higher on dollar. And then across the board, the rest of those, can follow suit as well, right? So that's it for me, guys. I will see you guys on the next one. Much love, much appreciation. Peace out.